Good morning. My name is Greg Stroud, and I have been a member of First Baptist Church of Lancaster for 36 years and have had the privilege most of that time of being a teacher of the Bible. What we're doing is we're having a weekly Bible study provided for you, our members, and anyone who might want to tune in to our website. And I've had the gracious privilege of being asked to serve as the teacher for a brief Bible study. This is an extraordinary time that we're experiencing, really unprecedented for all of us. And as I was considering what would be appropriate lessons for all of us in this time of upheaval and anxiety that's born out of an acute awareness that we're really not sure about what the next day will bring, except for maybe bad news, I considered this question. In times that challenge us the most, what is fundamental and necessary to the people of God? What should be characteristic of the Christian? You see, it is our character and the characteristics that come from our character that will determine, for on the whole, who we are and how we respond to life's situations, both the good and the bad, both the easy and the hard. What is it that should help to form or shape our character, and what characteristic should the believer demonstrate to sustain him or her, to minister to others, and ultimately to glorify and please God? One of the most well-known and beloved chapters in the Bible is what many people refer to as the love chapter, chapter 13 of 1 Corinthians. Now, Paul is writing to a church that's very like most churches today, full of people that have gifts, that have talents, that have knowledge and resources, that are basically good people who have been taught well and taught how to behave, but on occasion behave rather badly. And what was apparently happening, Paul was dealing with the issue of spiritual gifts. What was apparently happening is some of the people were exercising some of the attention-getting gifts, like speaking in tongues and prophecy and giving a word of knowledge, while others were not. And as can be the case, some were getting puffed up and some were being jealous of the others. And it was creating division in the church. So Paul had to address this issue. And basically what he said was that unless love is infused in any of the gifts, they really don't have too much value, if any value at all. And he went on to say that all of these gifts, prophecy, speaking in tongues, knowledge, all of these things are temporary. They will pass away. And he went on to say this, but these will remain. Three things: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Now, what I would like to do over the next few weeks, if we're still meeting via video, is to look at each of these characteristics and see what it is that the Bible has to say about each. Now, we obviously can't do an exhaustive study of each of these, but hopefully we can distill them down to the primary understanding of each one of these. The first is faith. Now, faith is a word that's often used in today's conversation, and honestly is frequently used rather loosely and without much definition. You often hear people say that I have a faith, or that person is a person of faith, or we just need to keep the faith. And really, those statements don't convey much meaning to me unless I understand first what is the object of their faith. In other words, faith in what? Because really, with real faith, it is the what, or the object of one's faith, that will shape that person, their beliefs, their values, their behaviors. Now, obviously for the Christian, the object of our faith, or objects of our faith, is God, His truth revealed in His Word, His Son Jesus and His atoning sacrificial death on the cross for our sins, and the promise for eternal life for those who have surrendered their lives to Christ in that faith. So what is faith then? Well, let me start by saying what faith is not. Many have described the Christian faith as being in this way. I took a leap of faith. And it's as if they're standing on the edge of the abyss, close their eyes and leap off into the darkness, hoping for the best. Now, folks, this is not faith. That's gullibility. That's superstition. And the Bible describes exactly the opposite. Paul said to the church in Ephesus, he says, "You were once darkness, but now you have gone into the light. You have moved into or entered into the light." The believer doesn't move out of the light and into the darkness, but rather the believer moves out of the darkness and into the light of God. This is the same God who gave the divine command, "Let there be light." And there was light. The very author and source of light is who we are leaping into. Now, the writer of the book of Hebrews defines or describes faith in Hebrews 11:1. In the New King James Version, it's stated or translated like this: "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." In the English Standard Version, it's translated in this way: "Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen." Now, I've given both of these translations because together I think they bring real clarity to what the author is trying to tell us. First of all, faith has substance. It's not based on nothing. It's not based on thin air, but rather there is a real substantial basis for our faith that leads us to hope. Faith is built on a foundation or a substance or stuff that we already know and have experienced and are convinced that this substance or stuff is true. And furthermore, because we are so convinced about these truths that we already know and already have experienced, it becomes evident to us that we have reason to have a sure hope for the things that we cannot know and cannot see, both here and into the future. Now, I like the ESV's use of the word conviction. If you look at the origins of our English word, you would find that its roots are in the Latin word convincere. Now, this is actually a compound word joining the prefix con with the root word vincere. Now, I'm saying it with a W because V's in Latin are pronounced with a W. Now, vincere means to defeat or conquer. The prefix con is an intensive, which means it intensifies the root. It's very much like the word super for us. So some people would say, I am excited about when this coronavirus is going to be passed. To intensify that would be to say, I am super excited about when this coronavirus is going to pass. So, in the basic meaning of the word is that it is an overwhelming, conquering, or defeating of something. Now, in this context, what is it that is being overwhelmingly conquered or defeated? It's doubt. It's doubt. Conviction is being fully persuaded that a belief is so completely true that it overwhelmingly defeats doubt. It's a super belief, if you will. Dr. Al Mohler said it this way: we all have beliefs that we hold. We don't hold convictions. Convictions hold us. They are the things about which we are so certain, so assured, that we don't know ourselves without these convictions. Convictions really identify who we are, and they will ultimately determine how we view the world, how we view reality, how we think, our value systems, our morality, our character, and will in the end determine what characterizes the way we respond to all of life's situations. Faith, real faith, has to have an object, and that object has to be faith-worthy or trustworthy. Trustworthy enough to overwhelmingly conquer doubt. I and you must be able to say with conviction that I have found the object of my faith to be trustworthy through my own experiences, through my own beliefs, or through the experiences and beliefs and testimonies of those that I trust enough that I can place my faith and trust in that object. Now, I'd love to elaborate further on the evidence as stated in the New King James, but I don't have time. So if you have questions, you can talk to me later. Now, I'd like to relate an experience of my own life that I think really illustrates this biblical idea of faith. Many of you have heard this illustration before, but I think it's worth repeating. And besides, I'm a senior adult now, and we can repeat ourselves and pretend that we don't know that we're repeating ourselves because we have an excuse, we're senior adults. God has blessed me with an incredible wife, Cindy, and 3 incredible daughters, Stephanie, Katie, and Maggie. And many summers ago, when the girls were young, Cindy and I took them to East Texas to a lake that had a designated swimming area. And in that designated swimming area, there was a wooden pier that was built from the beach that extended out about 60 feet or so. And of course, there were parents that were standing or sitting on the pier watching their children. There were teens that were sunning on the pier. And there were kids, older kids, that were jumping off the pier into the water. And once my girls saw that, they wanted to do it. Now, I'm pretty sure Stephanie was the first one to do it because she was 6 or 7, she was older, and she really didn't need any help. And she did it, and of course the other girls wanted to do it as well. So Katie, who was probably 3 or 4 at the time, with the little floaties on her arms, she wanted to do it, but she needed my help. So what we did is we put her on the edge of the pier, and I stood right directly in front of her in water that was probably about waist deep or so, and extended my arms to you and said, "Honey, jump, and Daddy will catch you." And she was getting encouragement from her Stephanie and from Cindy and from me. And she was real hesitant, and she had that look of doubt and fear on her face. But with the encouragement of all of us, ultimately she sprang forward, and I caught her and kind of half dunked her in the water and pulled her up, and the fear that had been frozen on that face just evaporated into sheer joy, and she loved it. And so I carried her back to the beach in my arms and put her on the wooden pier, and she walked back with her sisters and Mom. Well, Maggie was next. Now, Maggie was only about 2 or 3 at the time, and she experienced one of those things that we sometimes see with children, that she was dying to do something, but at the same time she was dying not to do it because she was afraid. But with our encouragement, she inched forward to the edge of that pier, but she was looking down at the water the whole time. And she was noticing the distance between her and I. And I know in her little mind, in her little eyes, 2 things were going on. She realized, one, she couldn't reach me. And she didn't know how easily it was for me to reach out to her. And the other things, it seemed like a great chasm between her dad and herself. But in that chasm was filled the dark nothingness, if you will, or the dark unknown of the water. So she was scared. You could see it. And she was frozen in place. So I said, Maggie, look at me, babe. Look at me. Daddy will catch you. I promise. It's going to be okay. Well, I had to say that several times. Maggie, honey, look at me. Daddy is going to catch you. It's going to be okay. Finally, she looked up from the water and she looked at me and she jumped. And of course, I caught her and splashed her in the water and she loved it. And I grabbed her, held her in my arms and walked her back to the beach and put her on the pier. She wanted to do it again. So she walked back to Mom and the girls, and I walked next to her, and we got in position, and we did it again, but this time without much hesitation. And of course, as children would, she wanted to do it again. So I walked her back to the pier and set her down. This time she kind of jogged back to the spot of her launching. And I had to kind of jog back to get in position for her to jump. And as soon as I got there, she jumped. And the fourth time, I put her down, and she sprinted for the spot. And I had to kind of, run slosh through the water to get in position, and she was waiting for me to get in position. As soon as I got there, she leaped. Well, I took her one more time, and I was not prepared for what was going to happen next. As soon as I set her down, she bolted for that spot, and I wasn't quite ready for her, so I was well behind her in our journey. And I, in fear and trepidation, watched her as she ran full out, without hesitation, in full stride, and leaped from the launching spot into the water even before I had gotten there. And I was barely able to leap forward and catch her like a football before she went under the water. Now, what happened there? Well, why would she do that? Why was she so confident that she was willing to jump into the great unknown even though she couldn't see me standing there? The first step was to stop looking down at the water and to look up into the face of her Father and to listen to His words of encouragement and His promise. Because of that, what she already knew about me, she had found the object of her faith to be trustworthy. Now, she didn't know everything about me because she was a little girl. And honestly, she didn't have to know everything there was to know about me. But what she did know was that I was her father. She knew I loved her. And she had experienced the safety of my arms, so that even at a time where she could not see me, she was convinced that I would be there. So she jumped. So I have to ask, do you have faith? Real faith? Who or what is the object of your faith? And is the object of your faith trustworthy? In times like these, are you looking down at the darkness around you? Are you looking up to the God's glorious light? God is worthy of our trust. Jesus is worthy of our trust. The truth and promises of God that we find in the Bible are worthy of our trust. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of the things we cannot see yet. God bless you, and I pray that this week you will consider the object of your faith to be the glorious light of God. Thank you.